Tamar Davis is joining us live via Skype today. Tamar, thank you so much for being here. It's good to see you.
Thank you. Good to see you guys.
And Tamar, obviously, we wish that we were speaking under different circumstances. You've known Prince for many years. What was your reaction when you first heard the news of his death?
I was in my car actually going to work out, and actually Kevin Frazier texted me and he said, "Hey Tamar, is Prince okay?" And I looked at the text message and I responded, I was like, "Yeah, I'm sure he's okay, he's fine." And then something told me to just pull alongside the road. I pulled alongside the road and I called Shelby, and Shelby was like panicking, and I was like, "Okay, wait, what's going on? What's happening?" And then that's when it hit me that Prince had passed, and I think it still hasn't hit me yet that he's passed, you know. And I think what hits me the worst is that the fans keep writing into me and they're like, "Hey, did you know Saturday night he was talking about you at his performance?" And, you know, it's just like mind blowing. Literally, like, it's one of those things like you never thought in a million years.
Yeah, everyone is so blindsided by this. I'm sure that, as you said, hits so hard for someone like you that knew him well. You've worked so closely with Prince. You sang vocals on his Grammy-nominated song "Beautiful, Loved, and Blessed" from his 3121 album. You also performed with him on Good Morning America's concert series in 2006. We remember that, have video of that as well. But when was the last time that you actually spoke with Prince, and do you remember what that conversation was like?
I was in Motown the Musical, and I was in Minneapolis, and I just kind of like went to Paisley and knocked on. I didn't even the door was open, and I remember walking in, and I saw Kurt there, which is his bodyguard, and I was like, "Where's he?" And he's like, "I'll tell him you're here." And we talked for maybe 30 minutes, and I was like, "Yeah, I'm in town, you know, I'm in Motown the Musical, you gotta come see the show." He was like, "Of course I'll come," and he came. But the conversation was basically about me, how was my family, and he was proud of what was going on. I always send him new music. And it was crazy because like he would be like, "Is that me playing in the background?" And that was kind of like the joke of that day. He always asked about my nephew at that time. My mother and him were pretty close because my mom used to sew some of his clothes like while we were on the road. The stories could go on like almost years and years and years. Like people have no idea. Like he was like Uncle Prince to me. Like he was the respectful, professional Uncle Prince. And then he would tell me things like, "You're my muse," or he'll be like, "Tamar, you know, keep performing. That's where your gift is going to shine the most." And I think it wasn't until like recently that I realized how much my gift just changes things. And he kept saying, "Tamar, you know, you're still my favorite singer." You know, and the fans still talk about it. They're like, "Tamar, like he talked about you on Saturday." And I think the shock comes in like, what was wrong? Because when Prince and I are together, I'll look him straight in his eye and I'll be like, "What's going on? What's happening? You know, are you good?" You know, it was certain people around him that literally was like, "Don't play, you know, tell us the truth." And he looked well to me. He looked well. He was laughing, we were joking like we always do. But he came to see me play Diana Ross that next day, and as soon as I entered the stage, you can hear people going, "Woo, woo, woo!" There he is. He's here.
It's got to be, you know, those great memories, and especially, obviously, you'll cherish them now as you look back. And you mentioned that he looked healthy. You didn't seem that there was anything wrong. But now as you look back, was there any reason, from your perspective, to believe that anything was wrong or that anything was going on with Prince when you spoke to him last, when you saw him last?
No.
Yeah. It's definitely...
I remember waking up yesterday morning, and I remember texting my best friend. I kept saying, "God's got it under his control, and I'm at peace." It was so weird. And she asked me yesterday, she said, "Do you remember what you texted me?" And I said, "No." I said, "I just remember feeling weird. I remember reading Psalm 91. I haven't read that in forever. And when I found out, it was just one of those, like, was I prepared for it? You know,
Yeah, it's something that, you know, how do you prepare for anything like that, and just this sudden and unexpected thing. Have you spoken with other people close to Prince since all this happened?
Oh yeah, I mean the family is a family. That's the cool thing. And you know, they always say at funerals that's what it's always a bittersweet thing because that's when you see people you haven't seen in a long time. I did get to speak to Cora, the female drummer Cora. I've spoken to Kim Berry, his hairstylist of 13 years. When he was rushed to the hospital on Saturday, I spoke to Morris Hayes. Morris Hayes has been the piano player for Prince since I was 11, because that's how I ended up going to Paisley and recording Somewhere Over the Rainbow when I was 11.
Wow.
That's how. And Karen Lee, which was his publicist, I think maybe 13 plus years. Those are like the crux of the people that I talk to. I have reached out to Sheila E. I've actually not seen Sheila E. since we did the NAACP Image Awards in 2005. But the network of the family is just, I don't even know if I'm prepared to see, you know, everyone. But we have talked. We talked throughout the day. I've spoken to Shelby. I've spoken to Ronnie Burks, who did his styling for a minute.
Is there a common thread among all those close people in terms of the way they're reacting or what they're saying about what may have happened?
Yeah, the common thread is absolutely speechless. Like I said, I was numb. I mean, I think when I hear the music, like when I was in the car today and they were playing the music, you just stop and you just cry. You just literally cry. Because you know, you've seen greats pass, but when they are family, like he came to my brother's basketball tournament in San Diego. Like we were family. Like before we even did our 11 city tour, he was like, Tamar, you want to fly your father out here? And he see us perform the show before we take it on the road. And there's a moment in the show where we would call up a guy out of the audience. And this was the tour that was Tamar featuring Prince. And I didn't believe it was happening. And my dad was the only person in the room. And it was just the band, my mom, my dad, my brothers, and Trevor, the bodyguard at the time. And Kim Berry was there. And I was like, I'm looking for a man to come up to the stage and sing with, you know, dance with me. My dad was the only one there. So it's like, hey, you, come on up here. And when Prince came to my brother's basketball tournament, he had a gift for me. And Prince didn't, because of his religious beliefs, did not believe in Christmas, but it was Christmas time. And he had two gifts for me that were wrapped in white with a gold bow. And it was two framed pictures of the time I pulled my dad on stage at the house. My dad has it in his office and we have one at home. And it's, I could care less about talking about it. I think this passing of him has given me the confidence to sing like never before. To trust the God-given gifts and everything that he saw in me. To trust it now.
That makes a lot of sense. And Tamar, you're obviously very strong for being able to sort of tap into those very personal stories at a time like this. And, you know, it's a time of reflection. We've heard from so many people close to him and fans that look back and remember things now through a new light when it comes to Prince. Do you remember that very first encounter with him? You know, you've known him for so many years and you have such a special, unique connection. Do you remember those first sort of encounters and what happened and how that relationship began?
I do. When I was 11, like I said, my demo was given to Morris Hayes, and Morris Hayes passed on the demo. You would have to talk to them about how all that happened.
Sure.
My mother and I were flown to Minneapolis, and I remember being in Paisley, and I remember singing in the studio. And I remember there was some paperwork going back and forth. I did a photo shoot, but nothing happened. And then in 2004, I worked with Tamia singing background, and that's where I met Fatima Robinson. And Fatima we stayed in touch, and I did a video shoot in 2005. I want to say it was like January maybe. And I remember the video shoot was going into 3 o'clock in the morning, 4 o'clock in the morning. And I remember we got in the house, and it was like smoky. And I remember the kitchen was off to the left. This is where 3121 literally thrived, like how it was birthed, was at this house. And this is, of course, before I knew that. And I remember sitting on the couch and it was smoky and they were like, all right, action. And then like all these dancers were dancing or whatever. And then you just kind of heard this voice like on the system, but you know, you didn't think about it. And I remember he walked past me while I was on the couch and I felt like, I remember moving like, ooh, you know, what was that? And they were like, okay, cut. And so I was like, cut. They're like, all right, you guys can go home. And I was like, go home? And so I go into the kitchen and Fatima was like, yeah, I really wanted you to be here so that you could meet Prince. And I was like, Prince? And I looked around, oh, that's Prince. Long story short, he had an after party for all of the people involved in the video shoot. And I remember going up to the house with a friend of mine and the house was kind of, the attendees were kind of dwindling down and he was off to the right at the pool room. And he was playing pool, and there was a house band there with Cora on drums, Josh was on bass, and Sheila E. was on percussion. Oh, no, Sheila was on percussion, and Cora was there. And I've known Cora for a long time because we're both from Houston. And we hugged, and we're like, oh my gosh, this is about 3 in the morning. 4 in the morning comes by, and people are leaving, so my friend and I are like, well, maybe we should leave. And Prince was literally saying bye to everyone. Like, he was literally at the door, and he was like, thanks for coming. And so my friend was like, you know, I should say something and say thanks for opening your home. I was like, well, I'm not saying anything. You say something. And my friend got a good response from him. So that's when I was like, well, maybe I should say something. So I walked up to him and I was like, hi, my name's Ashley. You recorded a song for me when I was 11. He kind of looked and I was like, yeah, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. He was like, oh my gosh, how old are you? And then it's like a whole nother story in itself. But the first reaction was, at first he was like, huh? And then I was like, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. He was like, oh.
So great.
And yeah, the story goes on and on and on. It's a whole nother 10,000 chapters of, you know.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Prince's life is something that's obviously very personal to you, and his legacy also personal. But I want to know how his legacy will inspire you as you continue with your music career.
That's a deep question in itself. When Prince and I first started talking that actual day, we were in the home studio. It was me, my friend, and Prince, and he brought in Manuel at the time, which was his wife at the time, and we kind of jammed and rocked out, and he said some words to me that were like way before what was happening in the music business. And he was just like, Tamar, live music is where it's going to be. He was like, this internet is going to boom and things are going to sell that way. And he was like, live music is where it's going to be. And he was like, if you perform live and get the supporters in your hand and give them an experience that they'll never forget, that's what's going to make you soar. And I had no idea what that meant until recently, literally like recently. And now that's what I said. At the end of the day, the fact that he is gone, it's weird because it's like, I'm thinking for my second album, I'm going to be able to send it to him and be like, okay, what about this? Do you think I need to add more guitar? Do you need to? And at this point, I have to trust that the things that he's spoken to my life about live performing, he said, Tamar, one day you're going to produce. I've been producing all my music from ground up. Even the album Milk and Honey that we did together, only two songs he did, which was Kept Woman and Milk and Honey, he brought to the table. Everything else, we would be in the studio and I would be on the piano, like playing some songs. And all of that is now making sense. And to answer your question, I have to have confidence in the gift that God has given me. And even when people talk about me and they say, well, Tamar, that's all he talked about was you. That's all he talked about was you. And I think I don't see him as Prince, this celebrity. And I really felt like he was this uncle that just said, if you don't do it, no one else will. And it's now or never for me to just really focus on music and the live performances. And that's ironically what I was planning to do, and then this happened. So.
Yeah. Well, Tamar, we really appreciate you opening up to us and speaking on some things that are very personal to you. We really appreciate you joining in that as we all, in our own very different ways, deal with this loss. Thanks a lot, and we wish you the best as you move forward.
Thank you, guys.